If you like this channel and what I do here, please help to support my work by checking out one of my books, available from Lulu Publishing and Amazon.com. Thank you. Hi folks, Carl James here from Electric Media Madness. You're joining me today for another review of The Mandalorian, going solo again today. Dan Ryan is currently enjoying his PlayStation 5, so I'm afraid you've only got me today. This is episode 4 of season 2, also known as chapter 12, the episode called The Siege. Really good episode, really enjoyed it. Those people who haven't seen it yet, there will be spoilers ahead, so I'm going to work my way through the plot first, and then I'm going to give you a few points of discussion, things of interest that I noted as I watched the episodes. I'm going to go through my little trusty notepad here, some of the things that I've jotted down as I was going through. So we start with Mando still having trouble with his ship, the Razor Crest. He's got little baby Yoda in a power conduit trying to fix the wiring, but that doesn't seem to work. Baby Yoda keeps getting it mixed up, doesn't really understand what Mando's trying to get him to do to repair it. So he decides that they should head to planet Dave Navarro for repairs. On planet Dave Navarro, we see some mercenaries. They're up to no good, and they are quickly dispatched by Gina Carano's character, Cara Dune, making a welcome return here. Great character, great actress as well. So she's now the marshal of the town, being run by Carl Weathers' Grief Karga. Since we last visited them, the town is now quite a respectable place. It's become something of a sort of a nice community. It's a trading post. So Mando arrives for some repairs, and he gets recruited by Karga to help them take out an Imperial base that's been located on the planet. It's causing some problems for the planet, and they realise that if they can get rid of this Imperial base, then the planet can become a truly independent trading post again, without any interference from the remnants of the Empire. So Mando agrees to this little mission that they're going to go on, and he leaves baby Yoda at a local school. Bit of an odd beat there, really, given this whole sort of over-protectionist sort of attitude he's had to baby Yoda before, but he leaves him with a group of children and this protocol droid who's a teacher. So we see Mithril, the blue alien that was first seen in the very first episode, actually, The Mandalorian. He works at the settlement now, and he's recruited to join Mando, Karga and Cara Dune for their attack on the Imperial base. So the plan is to overload the reactor to the base and destroy it. They take a speeder to the base and they sneak their way in. Cut a long story short, they do succeed in overloading the reactor, the coolant system for keeping the reactor under control. So they sort that bit out, and they've got a little bit of time before they need to escape from the place, before the place blows up. But in doing so, whilst they do this, they also uncover like a transmission from the Imperial Doctor that we saw, the chap who's working for Moff Tarkin. Moff Tarkin, there's a Freudian slip there. Moff Gideon, who we saw in the first episode or two back in season 1. And this Doctor took some of baby Yoda's blood, and he used it to inject what he calls the M count in this episode, but we know it's midichlorians, so it's Force users. And they injected this blood into various test subjects, presumably to create a new army of Force users for the Empire, well, the remnants of the Empire. But it appears that they haven't had a great deal of success with this initially. Within the first couple of weeks of injecting these test subjects, they did have some success, and then things started to go wrong. And they've also now exhausted the supply of baby Yoda's blood, so they need some more, i.e. they've got to try and get baby Yoda back. So Mando realises that baby Yoda is in danger. So maybe he shouldn't have left him in the school, as I said before, with the protocol droid and all that, but there you go. So he jetpacks off back towards the settlement to rescue baby Yoda. The others, meanwhile, they take out the base. They escape in this armoured speeder tank type thing. I think it was called a Marauder or something like that. And they're being pursued by stormtroopers on speeder bikes, which they ultimately dispatch. Get a great little fight sequence there with the gun turret, Carl Weathers powering the gun on the back and that, shooting out the speeder bikes and that. But then they get pursued by TIE fighters, which is a bit of a harder thing to take care of. They don't seem to be able to take these TIE fighters out, but as things start to appear hopeless, the Razor Crest appears with Mando and baby Yoda on board, and they save the day. And that really is it for the bulk of the episode. Towards the end of the episode, towards the conclusion, we see this Rebel Alliance officer, X-Wing pilot type thing. He appears and he's talking to Greef Karga about the base and what Gideon was up to at the base, that sort of thing. As the New Republic, they're getting a bit concerned. I mean, he says that in the core worlds they're not really all that concerned, but there's a lot of rumours going on about what the remnants of the Empire might be up to. Greef Karga's like, well, no, we can only tell you what we know, but we don't really know a lot. So the final scenes that we get really are on board an Imperial cruiser, and we learn that one of the repairmen on planet Dave Navarro, who was repairing the Razor Crest, was working for the remnants of the Empire, and he planted a homing device on board the ship, which presumably is now going to allow Moff Gideon to track them and relocate Baby Yoda. And in the final scene, we see Gideon, and he's standing with this sort of like a platoon of Imperial-looking soldiers. It's a bit difficult to tell whether it's armour or they're robots or they're sort of what their true nature is uncertain. Are they going to be force wielders, or are they just like super soldier type things or something like that? Really, I think we're going to have to wait and see where this one goes. But it was a nice little closer to the episode. Some points of discussion really that I wanted to just bring up here. Gina Carano is great, but then she always is. You know, she plays a great part here with Cara Dune. Carl Weathers also puts in a great performance. He also directed the episode. And Karga's development in this episode, it gives us some nice little touches. We get this sort of in his role now as the town administrator. There's some echoes of sort of Lando Calrissian, of the administrator of Bespin in Empire, that sort of thing. That's what I thought anyway. There's some nice back and forth between him and Mithras when they're sort of bantering with each other, and he's like, I'll stick you back in carbonite if you don't, and all this kind of thing, you know. So there's some nice little touches there. Moff Gideon back again. There's some foreshadowing in this episode of the events that are continuity wise in terms of what's to come from the Disney trilogy here. We see these tanks with force injected test subjects inside them floating around, which brought to my mind those tanks that we saw in Rise of Skywalker with the clones of General Snoke inside them, Supreme Leader Snoke, sorry. So although I thought that those touches were interesting, it's reminding us of a less successful era, a particularly less successful beats of the sequel film trilogy, and I don't really think that that's something that we need to be reminded of at this moment in time, because the wounds for a lot of fans are still quite sore. I think by all means do plenty of the myth, the arc, the world building, that kind of thing, but I would say either use the more satisfying member berries and the fan pleasing aspects of they've done it to some degree, you know, with like Bo-Katan and Boba Fett, although, you know, that's neither here nor there at the moment. Alternatively, from these things, try doing something new, you know, something completely new, some new world building, something that's not really going to remind us of the less successful. I mean, whether certain people in Disney, whether they actually want to admit that these are less successful, we as fans of watched the demise of a lot of things since Disney got its hands on Star Wars, and especially after these things are still going on, especially after the recent Lego Star Wars holiday special. Less on that subject the better. I may go into it in another video, I'm not sure yet, but yeah, they still keep going back to that well, and they still keep slapping the fans around with this one. So on the subject of those things that do work, we talked about in the previous episode, in episode 1 of this season as well, like the return of Boba Fett, and there's mentions of Ahsoka Tano as well. Naturally, you can't expect an immediate payoff from those things being mentioned, but it does appear that The Mandalorian has kind of fell into a bit of a pattern where it's got like, one episode you get like world building, arc building, all that kind of thing, and then you move away from that in the next episodes, and it seems to be sort of like a filler. And this episode very much does feel like a filler. particularly after last week's episode, which was a brilliant episode. But this episode's still a very welcome one, even though it's a filler. There's a lot of things going on it. The action sequences were great. The fight sequence, well orchestrated, well choreographed. They look really, really, really good. The special effects, again, were top notch, but they generally always are in this show. Lots of member berries, the likeable member berries, going back to the tone and the feel of the original trilogy with the stormtroopers and all that kind of thing. The aesthetic of the Empire. In my opinion, that never gets boring, but you know, I know everybody would agree on that one. But I'm sure that people out there will find lots of things wrong with that and with this episode. And on that subject, you know, we've had a lot of that going on just lately. People have found, you know, we've already had egg eating gate and boob armor gate. I'm sure there'll be people who'll find some fault with this one. Maybe this week we'll get Baby Yoda eating green Oreo cakes and then puking them up gate. I don't know. I don't know. But I mean, I do have a lot of issues with Disney Star Wars. I actually have a lot of Disney issues in general. Those people that want to learn more about that, I won't get into it here, but check out my alternative knowledge research. I've got plenty of videos on YouTube and books I've written. A lot of research into that subject, so I'm not wild about Disney at all. But another thing that I need to bring up here as well is we still have a lot of people that are responsible for the carnage that's happened with Star Wars since Disney's got its hands on it. Inside Disney, behind the scenes, still pulling strings, i.e. Kathleen Kennedy, and there's many others as well. And I don't think that we'll never ever be able to truly forgive or forget, certainly not even the forgive part, what has happened to Star Wars under the aegis of Disney until we've got those people gone. It's the same thing with Star Trek with the JJ Brigade. It's the same thing with Doctor Who and the BBC and Chris Chibnall, that kind of thing. You can never start to redress what's happened and for the fans to do a bit of healing and move forward. Now, whilst these people are still around doing what they're doing, these are the ones responsible for doing all the damage, and they need to be gone before anything can change. But on saying that, Mandalorian in its own right, it's not a bad show. It's not an offensive show. It's not a bad show. In fact, it's a perfectly watchable show. And on occasion, it is actually a very, very good show. As I gave a 9.5 out of 10 for last week's episode. You know, it's a brilliant episode. So it can do it. And I'm wondering, maybe, you know, it certainly is a good thing to keep these people that do the damage away from it as much as possible. Yes, the preferable option would be for them to be gone altogether, but if nothing else, just keep them away from it, you know. And whatever criticism people out there might have of Dave Filoni, he certainly does seem to appreciate the whole sort of Star Wars lore and have a love and a passion for it, and you do see that coming through. And Jon Favreau as well, you know, somebody else that certainly has a love of the franchise. So, despite generally being a glorified filler episode, I still thought this episode was very good, and for that reason, and for the reasons that I've discussed in this video, I'm going to give this episode an 8 out of 10. Which I think is a very respectable score for certainly for Star Wars at this moment in time. Which says something about how good the Mandalorian seems to be at the moment. It seems to be moving in the right direction. It'd be interesting to see where all things are going with Ahsoka Tano, Boba Fett, all the rest of it. But for now, yeah, 8 out of 10. And that's really it for today. That's all I wanted to say with this video. Hope you've enjoyed this video. Please like it if you know, and share it about. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I'd truly, truly appreciate that. And I will see you again very, very soon. Take care for now. Bye bye.